Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Aloha.
Ruben Bressler.
Hi.
Good morning.
Yeah, guten Tag, brah.
Sorry I'm late. I'm a nappy boy. Yeah, I for those of you who watched the pre-show, I was a no-show for the first episode of the pre-show, which I'll go back and check out because I'm the one of us who's a patron. Just to see what dirty secrets you told about me. But yeah, I worked. This past weekend was Memorial Day, and on Saturday and Sunday, Sunday and Monday, aka Sunday night, Monday night, I worked 10-hour shifts and got home at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And so I woke up late because I am very reputable and you can count on me for things. And
it's funny because I was just telling Evan during the pre-show, you went on a big old emo storm on Twitter the other day and you were like, no one wants to work with me. And
I know.
Like,
yeah, my two-tweet emo storm. It's something I need to work on, being more punctual. I didn't set my alarm or anything, but I'm here now. I'm sort of awake. I'm trying my best, and we'll get through it.
Okay, well, we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben, and it looks like me mostly this week, will tell us who was the most luxuriant.
To be fair, I'm the one who picked this.
Right, this is a team effort. Aaron is the one who actually picked the winner this week. And I'm sort of presenting Evan as the main course of how this is going to be presented to the world.
Oh my God.
So, Isaac Ben Ruby, thank you so much for your comments, is the winner this week. I could tell you about my honorable mention, but I'd rather sing it to you.
Oh my goodness. All right. So
musical stylings.
The musical
stylings of Evan Irwin. He is going to sing the lyrics that Isaac wrote.
They're so good.
It's interesting. Let's see how this comes out. I don't know. We have not practiced this.
Nope. This is live.
Nope.
This is live. Oh my God.
In place.
Eugene. I'm begging of you, please don't kill my man. Eugene. Don't exile my boy just 'cause you can. Your fancy horns, your -10, your ghost fire just hit me again. With stately wings and a mana cost obscene. Your foil's worth $1 million. Your promo's fancy just because, and I cannot go without Eugene.
The minute I saw this, I took a look at the YouTube comments the other day and I could not go any further. I laughed for a good solid 5 minutes and I was like, Ruben, I don't normally tell you what to do with these, but this is gold. And like the fact that he wrote an entire song, an entire verse about Ugin the Spirit Dragon at Eugene, this was brilliant. The Ghostfire references, the wings, the mana cost, exiling the board. I've had my board exiled several times. To me, there could just be no other.
So the rest of the comment says, yeah, I know he's not really a spirit because we chose this for our top 10 spirits episode. But Ugin the Spirit Dragon definitely deserves a nod on the list. Sure, he might not see top tier competitive play all the time, but he's an absolute unit and commander. Legacy mud players such as myself peed a little when his card was spoiled. And to top it off, Ugin is an iconic pre-mending planeswalker that has been key to the Magic storyline for quite a while now. And not only that, his name works incredibly well with Dolly Parton's classic, Jolene. For these reasons, and also because I couldn't find a random song that worked with Sovereigns of Lost Alara, I propose adding Ugin the Spirit Dragon to your list.
Very
well
nice.
Done, Isaac.
You crushed it. Congratulations. Good job. Hit us up on social media. We'll get you that $50 gift certificate to coolstuffinc.com. And if anyone else wants to write songs and make me sing them, well, you know that's a thing now.
This is an untapped resource.
Patreon level, man.
Patreon level. Yeah, get an Evan Irwin cover.
The trumpet blast can be sang if you pay for it. So.
Oh my goodness! All right.
Oh my goodness! I love that idea.
Wow. Okay, so for our top 10 Planeswalkers, which we have never done this list, I went back and checked. I couldn't really believe it either, but we wanted to wait till after Oops All Planeswalkers set came out, so we did, and here we are. As such, as you can imagine, with only around 180 choices or so. There's a little bit of overlap, and by a little bit, I mean a lot. By that, I mean Aaron has more than 0 hires, which is good.
Only 2.
Yeah. But meanwhile, I got 4 and the same. Ruben, you got what? 4 and 2 same?
4 and 2 sames.
Okay, so it's not going to be the longest episode we've ever recorded, but that's okay.
We're going to pack a lot into it.
That's
it's okay because I woke up late, so we don't have a lot of time anyway.
Right. See, it's a circle of life, y'all. Circle of life. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and get started here with our top 10 Planeswalkers, which we've not done this episode before. I went back and checked just to make sure. Yeah. And we want to wait until Oops All Planeswalkers came out, and it has, and we're here. And now I don't have a number 10. It's higher on somebody else's list. That's going to be a theme. Ruben, do you have a number 10?
I have a number 10, but it's higher on someone else's list as well. It's also going to be a theme. Aaron, in fact, also has a number of hires that is greater than 0.
I only have 2.
Well, that's twice your normal amount.
It's true. Twice as much. So, Aaron, what's your number 10?
So my criteria for a lot of the Planeswalkers on this list is I wanted that multi-format dominance. You know, there's a lot of cute Planeswalkers out there, but I wanted Planeswalkers that were good enough to be a thing in at least 2 formats, possibly stretching all the way back to Vintage. And my number 10 is a Planeswalker that has never been legal in Standard or Modern, but she made a huge splash when she debuted in a Conspiracy set. She was the person responsible for killing King Brago, which made she was the hook that made people want to know more about Conspiracy. Due to popular demand, she was brought back for Guilds of Ravnica, taking over the Orzhov Guild. My number 10 is Kaya Ghost Assassin. So Kaya Ghost Assassin is from Conspiracy Take the Crown. She's 2 colorless, a white and a black, with 5 starting loyalty. You can 0 her to exile Kaya or up to 1 target creature, and return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of your next upkeep, and you lose 2 life. You can -1, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, or you can -2, each opponent discards a card and you draw a card. To my knowledge, she was the first Planeswalker that didn't have a plus. Like, she was the one that you had to minus, and if you wanted to blink her, that was the way that you could rejuvenate her, but she didn't have a traditional plus. And we would go on to see this be a thing in War of the Spark, where a lot of the Planeswalkers would just kind of minus down, and you would have to find things to do with them or find ways to refresh them with either proliferate or blinking. And this was a very popular Planeswalker. They even brought in consultant to make sure that they got the character right, you know, being a Black woman and not having a lot of Black women on staff at Wizards. She had a very irresistible backstory that people wanted to know more about her. She's currently going for over $20 right now. Conspiracy Take the Crown. She's in my Marchesa list. Big hit in Commander. Saw some fringe play in Legacy and Vintage at times. And I just love her, and I'm glad that they gave her more to do.
Her foil is $138.
Sure is.
That's crazy.
Because it's got alt art on it. That's just on the promo foil. Which is interesting. The first Planeswalker that didn't have a plus was, according to our Spanish friends, Sarkin El Loco.
Really?
Sarkin the Mad. Yeah, from Rise of the Eldrazi. Okay. And that was very interesting. They kind of used sort of a dark confidant type mechanic to remove counters from him and whatnot. Yeah. So that was super neat. And this one, again, super neat here. And Wizards clearly took that and kind of ran with it with more of the spark. But Kaya Ghost Assassin was great. Super exciting, interesting, and a way to sort of reset herself. You know, she'll never have more than 5, but that's kind of cool.
Yep.
Yeah, this is really sweet. And help, Conspiracy Take the Crown be one of those sets, another one of those sets where, like, the sealed product just dried up and now it's worth a whole bunch of money. So, like...
I started putting my Commander decks up on Tapped Out so that people could see like what I play if I'm talking about them on the show or if I'm posting pictures. My Marchesa deck was a little over like 150 when I bought it a couple years ago. It's now worth almost 400, largely because Marchesa is now almost at a $40 card. Yep. Kai is over $20. Like these cards, Machiko Kanda, $20 from Kamigawa, cards that I thought were worth like nothing, have almost doubled. And I'm like, is this, it's like a butterfly meme of like, is this finance?
Yeah, that's Commander for you. Like, it's not Modern Horizons, it's Commander Horizons.
$19 now? Like, wait.
Again? Jeez. Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's incredible. Let's go ahead and turn here to number 9. Ruben, do you have a number 9?
I have a number 9, but it's the same as someone else.
Hey, girl, hey.
Hey.
So our number 9, we could talk about our number 9.
Yeah.
But Evan, if you have your guitar still there.
Oh, God.
I can give you a little vocals. It's fine. So.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, so our number 9 is just a powerhouse card that has, again, seen multi-format play. It's mostly in Modern. It's a big part of the Tron decks. They never leave home with at least 2 copies of this. Legacy Mud tends to play it quite a bit as well, and just has a very devastating effect on the game if you are able to drop this. It's a win condition all on its own. Our number 9 is Ugin the Spirit Dragon. So Ugin is from Fate Forge, currently going for $90.
That's crazy.
You can get it for about $80 if you don't mind a little stank on it, but this is a $90 card, you guys. Legendary Planeswalker, subtype Ugin, starts off with 7 loyalty. You can +2 it to have Ugin deal 3 damage to a creature or player, just a bolt for you. You can -X to exile each permanent with converted mana cost X or less. It's 1 or more colors. A devastating effect on any board. I know as a Dredge player, it's like the only card I care about, but when it goes off, you just cannot come back from that. It is devastating. Yep. And for -10, you can gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, and then put up to 7 permanents from your hand onto the battlefield. Just
It's a hell of a Magic card. No doubt about it.
This card was very popular in Standard, in blue-black control, Abzan mid-range, Green Devotion decks used this. It was also popular in the Esper Dragons and Blue-Black Dragons. Shota Yasuoka came in 2nd place in a Pro Tour with it.
Nice.
It's in one of those just random control decks. It's an extremely popular card. It was referenced specifically, I believe, on Haven of the Spirit Dragon, where it said that you could get back a dragon creature or an Ugin Planeswalker from your graveyard. And of course, there is also the Ugin's Fate version of Ugin the Spirit Dragon, which I think was pre-release.
Yeah.
You could get the alternate version. Those will cost you a crisp $186 bill.
That's a hell of a Magic card because it's 8 mana, right? So when they make a colorless Planeswalker, there's always like, well, what does it do? And is it better than everything else at that mana cost? Because that's going to be a problem. Mm-hmm. So, and it's hard to reprint because it's such a powerful card and it's sort of takes up so much design space. You don't really want to put it back in Standard, I don't think. So you really kind of want to put it back into maybe Modern Horizons. Like we'll have some amount of reprints. Everybody wants fetch lands back and stuff like this. Have you looked at Bloom Tender's price lately, for God's sake? $58.
That's absurd.
For the Eventide rare, I used to just like trade away for like $1, like it was nothing. It was ridiculous.
Jesus.
Oh my God. Anyway, Ugin's amazing and terrific. Definitely on my short list. It doesn't, and it was basically going to be my number 9, which is funny enough, as you guys were clearly on the same wavelength. But I wanted to choose one just that I really liked it. This is not necessarily pure static power level of just overpowering. Was incredible in tournament play. Is still very good, I think. But I think the heyday might have came and went, essentially. But I love the story moment. I love the creature, or I love the character, rather. I love how it works with a certain creature. And I love what it did to the story. Because when we go back to Innistrad, Nahiri is pissed. Nahiri is mad.
Team Nahiri.
She ain't having it. And
Thorn is trash.
Nahiri the Harbinger stuck a man in stone. A white, a red, and 2 generic mana for a mythic Planeswalker. Nahiri has 4 loyalty to start. +2, you may discard a card if you do draw a card. -2, exile target enchantment, tapped artifact, or tapped creature. And -8, you search your library for an artifact or creature card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. It gains haste, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So you still get that creature back. You still get one giant swing with Emrakul, which is what you want. And this is you got another turn, like this turn I'm going to +2, next turn I'm going to +2, and then you better have something or it's going to happen.
Gave birth to an archetype for a couple months after she came out. Jeskai Harbinger was very much a thing where you had the Jeskai control decks in Modern that were running this and even running a copy of Emrakul. And then people were running obscure, cards to try to deal with it. I think it was bribery that people were playing as a way to like get the one copy of Emrakul so they
Thanks,
could
8th edition.
I know. And so I love this. She was the payoff to the Eldritch Moon block. The hook for that set was trying to figure out who was responsible for the cryptoliths and for the weird happenings. And, you had the Merit Lage truthers and you had everything going on. And ultimately ended up, being that she was the one who had come back to Innistrad to do to Soren's plane what had happened to her plane. And so this was the payoff. You wanted to know who was behind it. And this card did not disappoint. She was a key figure in the Sun and Moon decks in Modern as well, the red-white enchantment prison decks. Like I said, she spawned her own archetype for a while there. And I love this character. I love that her and Soren are still fighting on Ravnica. I thought that was great. And this card definitely got your attention.
Yeah, this card was totally sweet.
The fact that we never got a Soren versus Nahiri dual deck makes me so sad, because it's like, I love this story.
Yes.
This little mini arc that is not really a main part of any of the sets, but is a little side part of all of the sets. It's like constantly referring back to, for example, this is going to be a corner case reference, but the My Cabbages guy on Avatar: The Last Airbender, he just shows up at random points in the story, and it's not the central piece of anything, but he's always ever present, and it's always a little bit in the background. Nahiri, this card in particular, is probably the best flavor win for a competitive deck that I've ever seen. The fact that Nahiri the Harbinger in the story is the Harbinger for Emrakul and the Eldrazi coming to Innistrad, and Jeskai Nahiri Harbinger goes and gets Emrakul.
The flavor is...
Opponents. The flavor win there is amazing.
What I love the most about the Soren and Nahiri conflict is that it's subjective. Where with Bolas, you cannot deny that Bolas is a villain. Nobody's apologizing for Nicol Bolas. Nobody's saying that he's well misunderstood. When you look at Urza, most people realize that Urza was a jerk. Quite honestly, we're happy that he has a card, but nobody's apologizing for Urza or even Yawgmoth. But people had sides in the Soren Nahiri debate of, did Soren do her dirty? Was she justified in feeling the way that she was? And I thought that was really neat, because it wasn't as black and white as a lot of the antagonists that we see in Magic. A lot of people felt very strongly about these characters and still do. I was very much Team Nahiri on this one, and I love that about this conflict.
I mean, villains where you can understand what they're doing, those are always the best villains.
Yes.
There was Kilgore in Black Panther. You understood Killmonger, yes, thank you.
Oh yeah,
you understood why he was doing that.
The real hero, yeah.
And that was cool. That was great. So Nahiri's just she kind of wrecked the whole plane, but Soren kind of was a huge dick to her. So that's really weird. So
I came here, you got this other girl, you shoved me in the hell vault with her ass for how many years? And then I get it. I've been there, girl.
Right. It's time for revenge.
It was say my name with Planeswalkers. It was great.
It was pretty good. Let's move on here to number 8. Ruben, do you got a number 8?
My number 8 is my first solo entry onto the list, and it was a dominant force in Standard in a number of decks. Any blue-based control deck, blue-white, Jeskai, Esper, wasn't going to leave home without this card while it was in Standard. It was most notable, actually, in Blue Devotion, which was a little bit late to actually pick up this card. Originally, this slot was held by Bident of Thassa, but then eventually people settled on the fact that they wanted to have Jace, Architect of Thought, instead. Jace, Architect of Thought is 2 colorless blue-blue legendary planeswalker Jace. It starts with loyalty 4. +1 until your next turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, it gets -1/-0 until end of turn. -2, reveal the top 3 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library in any order. And -8 for each player. Search that player's library for a non-land card and exile it. Then that player shuffles their library. You may cast those cards without paying their mana costs. Really just an absolute powerhouse in Standard, originally from Return to Ravnica. Of course, this is the Jace that is in the Jace versus Vraska dual decks. And which
is a thing. Jace Architect of Thought, this thing saw, everyone, first of all, let's wind back a bit. Everyone thought this card was crap. Everyone was just this card is bad. I can't believe they made it bad. They finally made a bad Jace, everybody. And didn't realize how unbelievably impactful -1/-0 to all your opponent's creatures are. it just changed everything. When you're like, wait, but I only do 1 damage and here, and wait, this one doesn't do anything. It was amazing, particularly with so many tokens or whatever at the time. So the idea you could shut down all their tokens, make all their forces very smaller. The mini factor fiction was insane. Clearly a mirror breaker in terms of who could get the Jace out and start factor fictioning rather. And so Jace Archetype of Thought was one of those where it's like, every Jace, I think, every Jace beyond like the Planeswalker deck ones has seen some amount of top tier play. Even this one, particularly this one.
I think there were a couple crappy ones after, but this one was even good enough to see Modern play.
Nice
at times, and it's always one of those cards where it's like you don't realize, you just feel like Sisyphus pushing a rock up a hill. Quite honestly, where it's like you just feel like you're never going to get there.
Yeah,
I mean, you could probably make an argument that Cunning Castaway hasn't saw a ton of play.
There was the other one. It was another 5. I think it came out. Oh God, it was another doozy.
Even the Living Guild Pact saw play. Yeah. That's the one that yes, it saw play in sideboards at the Pro Tour.
Yeah. And Unraveler of Secrets won a Pro Tour. So that's the 5-mana one.
Right. So all right, let's move on here to number 8 for Aaron. Aaron, what's your number 8?
My number 8 had really, really, really big shoes to fill, or big boots to fill. And I remember when this card came out and people were largely disappointed. This was one of those that they were like, really? Like, no one's going to use this. And a short time later, it became a staple of the modern black-green decks. It was slotted into, they were running it up like a one of. It even saw play in Legacy at various points. The Death Shadow decks, the Delver decks, the Bug decks were running this, the Grixis decks. And, I don't think it saw any play in Vintage necessarily, but I think this card has definitely proven its value. It's currently going for over $50 online. My number 8 is Liliana the Last Hope. So Liliana the Last Hope is from Eldritch Moon. She's a Liliana Planeswalker, 1 and 2 black with a starting loyalty of 3. You can +1 to up to 1 target creature gets -2/-1 until your next turn, which is fine. You can, weaken something or kill it if you would like to. You can -2, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. This was a staple of the black-green Delirium deck, so you could sort of dump your hand or dump, cards into your graveyard, which of course I love, and then get back your Ishkanas or get back your Grimflayers or what have you. Or you can -7, you get an emblem at the beginning of your end step, put X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is 2 plus the number of zombies you control, which gets out of hand very, very quickly. This card saw a lot of play in mono black zombies in standard, black-green Delirium in standard, Mardu Pyromancer in modern, any of the black-green Jund decks in modern. Legacy loves this card. I mean, who would have thought that this card started off as being kind of like, the ugly ducking of, Liliana, it's not the one, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, but she found a niche, and when in the right decks and in the right play style, she's gold.
Oh, she's terrific. And I certainly remember people going like, well, this 3-mana Lily's crap. And I'm like, okay, well, 3 mana is a 3-mana Planeswalker, and that's always dangerous.
And one that can impact the board in the way that she does, and the one that can garner card advantage. I think that people just weren't sold about her combination of abilities, but we've noticed that it doesn't really matter how corner case or quote-unquote bad the card advantage is. It doesn't matter how corner case or bad the protection ability is, as we've noticed from giving your opponents -1/-0 until end of turn.
And that being a big deal.
If it has those 2 things as a Planeswalker, then it's going to be successful. And Liliana the Last Hope is a great poster child for this. This was my number 10.
Nice.
I was also really impressed with this card as a story moment. The idea of Liliana getting to be a hero, where it's like, it just so happens that, Emrakul and Emrakul's hordes, can't affect dead things, like they can warp living material, and who can command dead things but Liliana? Like, that was just such a great turnabout of who can help us. All right, I suppose, It was I loved that so much.
I mean, it was also nice that the finals of that Pro Tour was Liliana against Emrakul.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, the Liliana herself, I mean, there's kind of this, repeating pattern of like Liliana kind of saves the day.
Yeah.
I love that about her, though. One of the reasons I relate to the character so much is that she doesn't do good in the conventional sense. She's not going to help an old lady cross the street or anything that you would think of when you think of doing good things, but she still has the capacity to do good, even if it's not in the conventional sense. And I really appreciate that, because in everything I've done in life and every job I've ever worked, I've helped people. I'm not working in a hospital. I'm not doing I'm not working for a charity, you know, I'm not helping people, but, you know, I'm able to kind of, you know, reach trans folks across the globe, just kind of doing what I'm doing. And I've gotten messages from people, and I've always worked jobs where I've helped people, where now I'm helping them with their investments, or I've helped them with their, you know, other needs. You know, I've talked about some of the colorful jobs I've had before. And like, I get it. I get feeling like, you know, okay, I'm not a hero, but like I can still help people. And I love that about her so much.
Nice. Well, my number 8 here, we're going to go all the way back. We're going to go all the way back to the originals. And when I looked at the originals, because like I remember, like I was there when they announced Planeswalkers. They just posted Liliana Vess. They didn't say anything else. Didn't explain it. They waited all weekend. They posted like a Friday, and they didn't explain it till Monday.
That's Wizards.
And it was great. Everyone was just throwing out theories and ideas, and what does this mean? Oh my god! And when you first held Planeswalkers, they were this weird, novel, like odd thing that you were like, whoa, this looks totally different and unique. I can attack this thing. Is this good enough? I don't know. Everyone was just like, this card's good. Wait, no, this card's bad. No, Jace is amazing. No, Garrick's great. No, Chandra's really cool. Like, then there was a Super Friends deck and everyone lost their mind, which was really fun. But when it came time for the Pro Tour, for what should have been the Fairies Pro Tour, well, Fairies didn't win Pro Tour Hollywood. Elves did. Because the best Planeswalker of the first 5 was Garrick Wildspeaker. Garrick Wildspeaker is 2 green, 2 generic mana for a 3 loyalty mythic Planeswalker, of course, with +1 untap 2 lands, -1 put a 3/3 green beast creature token onto the battlefield, or -4 creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. This was our very first one-shot ultimate, you know, one uptick, downtick ultimate on our very first batch of Planeswalkers. And it turns out that making 2 beasts for 4 mana was an incredible rate back then, like absolutely incredible. The ability to do that overrun really quickly to -1 and then play another Garrick and then +1 that, and then next turn you're able to ultimate with the beast tokens that you made. All of those plays were a thing that, like, while Fairies was great and powerful and whatever, Garrick is like, I'm just going to beat you to death with these giant monsters, and that's what he did.
Yeah, I first discovered this card back in Death Cloud because you wanted it for the ramp portion. Like, ideally, you would do like turn 2 Steve, turn 4 Garrick, untap your lands, and you get a Death Cloud out very quickly. And then you would just, because Planeswalkers weren't affected by Death Cloud, you would resolve a Death Cloud, you would take everything, and then you would just make beast tokens and just win the game. And I was like, okay. And then sometimes if you had to play fair, if God forbid they dealt with your Death Cloud, fine, I'll just give everything the buff and kill you that way. Like, surprisingly versatile for a Planeswalker.
Yeah, Garrick is, I believe this is Sheldon Menery's #1 best Planeswalker in Commander as well.
Really?
All time.
Wow.
Because when you think about, specifically when you think about green in Commander, Garrick does what you want it to do. It ramps, it lets you play a second spell in the turn, something like a Rampant Growth or a Mana Rock. And the overrun effect is able to end a game very quickly. It's able to protect itself. It does all the things that you really want. I actually think Commanders are pretty bad, or Planeswalkers are pretty bad in Commander, but Garrick is one of the few that would make the cut.
Very nice. All right, so let's move on here to number 7. I ain't got one. It's higher on somebody else's list. Ruben, do you have one?
Nope. It's higher on somebody else's list.
Aaron, do you have a number 7?
It is one of my 2 hires.
Wow. The full skipsies. Jeez.
We've only had that, I think, twice before.
Yeah.
Now 3 times.
Now 3 times.
Move on here to number 6. Ruben, do you have a number 6?
I do not. It's higher on someone else's list.
Aaron, do you have a number 6?
I do, but this is some behind the scenes dirt for you. I actually wrote down the wrong version of this card. So
we'll see.
You go ahead and you run it, and we'll stop you if we have to.
All right. So again, going back to multi-format dominance, this is the first Planeswalker, aside from Jace, that really saw a lot of play in Vintage. And while its heyday has largely come and gone, this card is still very, very popular. It has its own, it's become the name for an archetype. Anytime a deck involving this Planeswalker comes out, it usually has a bit of a nickname to it. It's been reprinted a couple of times. And if you're doing anything with artifacts, especially broken artifacts, you want a copy of Tezzeret the Seeker.
Nice.
So Tezzeret the Seeker is 3 colorless and 2 blue. It's a Planeswalker Tezzeret with 4 starting loyalty. You can +1 to untap up to 2 target artifacts, which, hello, Soul Ring. You can -X to search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost X or less and put it on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. If you're playing Vault Key, there's the other half of your combo. Ensnaring Bridge. Yeah, before Karn, everyone's talking about new Karn being able to tutor artifacts. This guy was the one you wanted to go to when you wanted any sort of broken artifact shenanigans. Or you can -5, and artifacts you control become artifact creatures with base power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn. Tezzerator is a very popular nickname for any deck playing Tezzerets. It can be Agent of Bolus, it can be the Seeker. It's probably the Seeker, but Tezzeret decks have been a thing in Modern, they've been a thing in Legacy. Some people just want to play blue-black and lots of artifacts, and it's fine. And so anytime I've seen this card, especially in the older formats, nobody's playing fair. And so if it's unfair and it's old, I love it.
I mean, Time Vault in and of itself, like, Tezzeret goes and finds it, and then Tezzeret untaps it. So, like, it's the whole package right there together. That was one of those, like, it's in what format? Wait, the 5-mana walker? What? Yeah. It's like, well, it's the whole package, essentially, all by itself.
I remember that as soon as it came out, LSV was playing it in Vintage.
I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, but I mean, now it just makes total sense. Of course, this also made the top 8 of an extended Pro Tour. Kenny Oberg's Tezzerator, that was the Elves Pro Tour, and it's just an extremely powerful card.
Yeah, it turns out that the first version of Tez was not bad at all, and I think a lot of people wrote it off, at least as I recall.
Yeah, but a lot of people did. Most people historically, people have been very bad at figuring out whether Planeswalkers will be good or bad, particularly through the lens of older formats.
Right.
And Tezzeret was yet another example.
There you go. All right. So let's move on here to my number 6, which is a total BA. And this was another one of those classic of it came out. It was, it was previewed, as we say these days. It was previewed. And it was looked over entirely. This card was like, yeah, whatever, you're cute, but the real all-star is this other Planeswalker. And if that one's not nuts, there's another Planeswalker that's even more exciting that they're giving us just to go show up at the pre-release, which was kind of nuts in and of itself. But when the chips all fell, Elspeth Knight Errant stood alone as a monster in Standard. Now, Johnny Vengeance was very good and very played, don't get me wrong. But Elspeth Knight Errant was the hot stuff. Sarkhanval was supposed to be the big dog that was just going to wreck everybody. And these were the first Planeswalkers they printed since Lorwyn, so everybody was super, super hype. But Elspeth Knight Errant is nuts. It's 2 white, 2 generic mana for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker that has +1, put a 1/1 white soldier creature token into play. +1. That's again 2 +1s. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains flying until end of turn. -8 for the rest of the game. Artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands you control are indestructible. Card's nuts.
Yeah, card's insane. Of course, this did win a Pro Tour. Brian Kibler and the big Zoo deck. This card was popular in White Weenie, in Kifkin, in Tokens, Naya. It's probably in your Marchesa deck, I would guess, Aaron.
How dare you?
I'm just guessing.
It's a great card.
It's a great card. It's in the Counter Cat decks, if you remember those from Modern. Just an extremely powerful Planeswalker that has a ton of application.
I still see her in Modern sideboards. Like old girl has a home.
Yeah, I mean, saw infinite play in Standard. The idea was like, not only was it protecting itself, it was +1 while it was protecting itself, and then its second ability was not only throwing this 1/1 into a 4/4 flyer. Like, wow. Or anything you had that was bigger than that, and Exalted was in there, and Noble Hierarch could make this thing come out on turn 3. Like, people weren't even ready for what Elspeth was bringing. It was nuts.
Elspeth has seen a ton of play in Legacy as well. Popular in the Stacks decks because it's able to make a token to sacrifice to Smokestack every turn. Even more popular in Maverick. When Maverick was running around and doing things. And it's crazy how popular this card got.
It was played in Legacy and Landstill decks. Like it was so sweet. Card's amazing. All right, so that is our number 6. Let's move on here to number 5. Ruben, do you have a number 5?
I do have a number 5, and it's a same character, different player. This was an Elspeth that absolutely dominated Standard for a long time. I think one of the first 6 mana planeswalkers to do so. My number 5 is Elspeth Sun's Champion.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I don't have it up yet. I apologize.
It's all right. I got it up here if you'd rather. Elspeth Sun's Champion is 2 white, 4 generic mana for a legendary planeswalker Elspeth, of course, with 4 loyalty. +1/+1, it makes 3 1/1 white creature tokens.
3 dudes, seriously.
That's right. -3, destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater, or -7, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2, and have flying.
So this, of course, was the Elspeth that was in the Dual Decks Elspeth versus Kiora inexplicable dual deck. I don't know about that rivalry. But saw a ton of play in, of course, blue-white control primarily.
Everything played her. I mean, I played her in the Abzan decks back then. She was an She was a mid-range card. She was a mid-range card. She was a control card. I mean, I had some good times with this card.
Any deck that had access to white mana and wanted to survive past turn 5 had it. Abzan mid-range, blue-white control, Esper control, 4-color. Constellation decks ran this card.
Her immediately.
Just everything, yeah.
Modern sideboard card again. This is something the Jeskai decks or the blue-white decks are running now. You'd be surprised how many decks in Modern can't deal with an Elspeth.
Yeah, I've seen it also in that red-white prison deck in Modern as well.
Good gosh, I mean, just recently, as of last year, it made a Grand Prix top 8. In team trios. That was incredible. GP Phoenix 2018, it was in the top 16. GP Lion in 2018, it made top 8. Like there's the resume for Elspeth is ridiculous. The +1 making 3 dudes seriously is nuts. -3 kills Siege Rhino. That was absolutely crucial. Like it's hard to say. Like all just like all certain planeswalkers of a certain converted mana cost are going to be compared against so-and-so. Well, you're 6 mana planeswalker. This is the first place you go.
Yeah.
Even when the new Liliana came out, people were describing her as like, I know critics were like, ooh, 6 mana for Lily's a lot. Oh, she was getting described in the same category as this Elspeth, which is
absolutely.
Which is amazing. Aaron, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is the last higher on my list.
Well, it turns out I got a higher on my list, and it's a number 5. So let's move on here to number 4. And I don't have a number 4 either. It's also higher on someone else's list, and that's fine. It's a very good card, and I'm excited to talk about it. Ruben, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is a card that is, I think it's my most recent entry on the list. I don't have any cards from War of the Spark in my top 10, and I don't think we've named any yet. But this is, of course, our card of the year on the Magic Mike's podcast from 2018. It won a Pro Tour in the hands of Mr. Gregory Orange, who used it, of course, in blue-white control. It has been a dominant force in Standard in all sorts of control decks. Jeskai, Esper, blue-white, the Turbo Fog kind of decks, you name it, this card is probably in it. My number 4 is Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria is 3 colorless white-blue for legendary planeswalker Teferi. Enters the battlefield with 4 loyalty. +1, draw a card at the beginning of your next end step, untap 2 lands. -3, put target non-land permanent into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. And -8, you get an emblem with, whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent and opponent controls.
Yeah, this was my number 5. This is a card that has seen dominance in 4 formats: Standard, Modern, Legacy. Legacy Miracles is running this card, and Vintage. This card has won Vintage challenges before. You think the plus is powerful? Try untapping a Library of Alexandria.
Yeah.
It feels incredible. I just recently started playing with this card in the 4-color Dreadhorde decks. And so, you know me, I am paying 5 for a Planeswalker, but I will reanimate it for 5 life, and it feels incredible. Being able to, this is one of those cards that your opponent doesn't know they've lost the game, where the fact that you're able to draw a card, untap, get sort of like a mini rewind effect. A lot of what the control decks are doing is cheap spells, so you can do so much with that spell. That's still away mana. That is that could be getting you towards a counter spell or a settle the wreckage or, what have you. There's just this hopeless feeling when you see a Teferi and you realize you have nothing against it. You don't know whether you should attack it. There were conspiracy theorists out there that speculated that the reason why Jace the Mind Sculptor was finally unbanned in Modern is because Wizards knew what they had with Teferi and that no one was going to care. And that kind of happened that way. No one's really playing Jace that much in the format, but they are playing Teferi, and Teferi just has that hopeless feeling of like.
Well, this is the rare higher/same. Because Aaron, I also have Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, exactly at number 5.
Wow.
Definitely wanted to make sure it was in the top 5. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, it doesn't cost 5. That's the key. That's why it's so powerful. It just costs 3 because you get that mana right back. And so it's doing crazy things in older formats. Wizards wanted this to be the best card in Dominaria, certainly the best Planeswalker, and got there. And now Teferi Time Raveler is like right behind him in terms of absurdity and playability. We'll see how that goes, but there is no doubt the dominance that this card has had for its entire existence in Standard. It is terrific. All right, so let's move on here to Aaron's number 4. What you got?
Well, since somebody's not going to cover War of the Spark Planeswalkers, I'm going to. This card has skyrocketed to the top. Multi-format dominance has reinvigorated archetypes. Post is good in Legacy. Like, what? What is happening? The combo of this card and Mycosynth Lattice has been a terror on the Modern format. This card has won, I think, the last 2 Vintage challenges the past couple of weekends. Vintage is now a matter of this Planeswalker or another one, which we'll talk about a little later. My number 4 is Karn the Great Creator. So Karn the Great Creator is from War of the Spark, legendary Planeswalker Karn for 4 colorless mana with a loyalty of 5, and it has a static ability. Activated abilities of artifacts your opponent's control can't be activated. This is asymmetrical, so this affects your opponent. It does not affect you. That is ridiculous. You can +1 until your next turn. Up to 1 target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to its converted mana cost. Those null rods that you have laying around that you are normally not good in multiples, go ahead and make them 2/2s and get in there and bash. It's fine. Or if you pair it with Mycosynth Lattice and the static ability, your opponent's just not playing Magic anymore. You can -2. You may choose an artifact card you own from outside the game or in exile, reveal that card and put it into your hand. We talked about Tezzeret the Seeker's ability to tutor from your library, but this is sideboard. You can have just this toolbox of 1 Tormod's Crypt, 1 Torpor Orb, 1 Null Rod, 1 Lattice, whatever you want to do. That is terrifying when you think of how many artifacts are out there and all of the bases that they can cover. It's frighteningly easy to get this out on turn 1. If you don't have the Force of Will, you're just not playing Magic. I'm sorry. This card has become a dominant force in Legacy, Modern, Standard is seeing play, and Vintage. I mean, this is just unreal and just shot straight to the top. Like, some Planeswalkers we've covered took a little while to find the niche. Oh no, people were chomping at the bit when this card came out, and it has not disappointed.
Yeah, it's been basically bananas for particularly those older formats. Now, because note, it can get an artifact in exile. You know how rare that is to actually say outside the game and exile?
Oh, yeah. Because the control decks, we talked about control in Modern. The control decks in Modern are jamming Karn Mycosynth. This is something they discussed on the last BNR announcement of this is a combo that we are keeping an eye on because this could very easily get out of control. When something is so good that you can jam it in anything, that's a sign that you need to keep an eye out for this.
And Kenji Egashira recently got 2nd place at the Mox Championship with Mono Green Tron that changed its whole deck around to be able to use Karn the Great Creator.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's good in prison decks. It's giving the prison decks a new life. It's giving, sort of the Word decks, the Lantern decks something to do. The Hardened Scales decks are picking this up. Post is good in Legacy, which, what? I mean, this is just wild, and I think it's great.
I think it's terrific. From going from 0 to one of the best cards in the set, I will take it.
Yeah.
Already a $15 card.
For $15 is not bad considering how much play it's seeing. Get them.
I mean, consider the other cards in your deck are $1,000 bills.
Right.
Well, this is a steal, y'all.
Exactly.
All right. Let's move here to number 3. Because if we're going to talk about one good card deserves another.
Yeah.
There's a little combination of lands you see in that Modern format. They call them the Tron as they clink, clink, clink together. And
a
you
beloved
tap,
archetype.
and you windmill slam that Karn Liberated. You do it. Karn Liberated showed up first in New Phyrexia, a 7 generic mana planeswalker with 6 loyalty on it, with a +4, for God's sake. +4, yes. Target player exiles a card from their hand. -3, exile target permanent. -14, restart the game, leaving in exile all non-aura permanents exiled with Karn Liberated, then put those cards onto the battlefield under your control.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
I love that.
That's
so funny.
That's a hell of a planeswalker.
It's such a funny line of text, too.
Yeah.
Leads to some great screenshots. Of course, Karn Liberated did not win a Pro Tour, but it did win the quote-unquote last U.S. Nationals, which Ali Antrazi won in 2011 in Blue-Black Control. Of course, then they brought back Nationals, and so it wasn't the last one anymore, but this card has, of course, mostly been the love of Urzatron, one of the most ubiquitous archetypes in Modern over the past, 5-6 years.
I mean, it's Pro Tour. It's a Pro Tour London was top 4 twice. 2 of the top 4 was that. Top 16 in the Pro Tour 25th anniversary. Top 16 all over GP Vegas 2018. Like, it's just Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan was in there as well. Like, there's no end to where Karn Liberated is in the Modern format. It's just, if you're Tron, what are you doing if you're not playing this card?
And before it was most recently reprinted, it was $1 billion for just a regular copy.
Yeah, it was getting to like $100, and
one of the rare cards that hits $100 as a non-foil.
Yeah. So, and it's definitely the card that you need to have a plan against, where it's like, if you're gonna and it's the card that you don't even need to really like. You don't even need to get to the 14. Most people will just scoop you a turn 3 card.
Yeah, they'll be like, all right, well, we're done here because you're going to exile with the best thing I got, and you're going to start +4ing like crazy. Mm-hmm. And it's $64 right now.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's got 3 printings, and it'll go back towards the way of the Scalding Tarn if they don't do something.
Yeah.
All right, well, that card was sweet. But Ruben, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is the last higher of my 4 that's on someone else's list.
Oh my goodness. All right. Aaron, what's your number 3?
My number 3 and my number 2 have one thing in common. And it's that they were both long overdue for a good card. There are some planeswalkers that have just been consistently good. Like, I would say most of the Lilianas have been good, if somewhat narrow. We talked about the Elsbeths, being good. Obviously, both Ugins have been good. There are just some planeswalkers that have never really had a bad showing. But then there are planeswalkers that just haven't taken off. They were cute, they had fun concepts, but maybe they got relegated to like one-ofs or sideboard cards or just didn't have the accolades. So this is a card that I was rooting for, and I was like, damn it, she deserves to be good. And now she's taken over 4 formats. She is another pillar of vintage now, right alongside Karn. Who would have thought? This card is responsible for so many judge calls. There are judges that are just like, if you follow any sort of number of judges on Twitter, the number of warnings that have come about because of this card are ridiculous. God bless her. My number 3 is Narset, Part of Veils. So Narset is from War of the Spark. She's a legendary planeswalker. Narset, 5 starting loyalty for 1 and 2 blue, a 3 mana planeswalker, $4 uncommon. Get them coins, girl. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. That is one of those abilities that you don't think about until you're playing Magic and you realize how many things you do lead to you drawing extraneous cards. And that's where all these warnings are coming from. All she does is just a little -2. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
That's half a dig through time, y'all. And
Narset in Standard, Narset in Modern, Narset in Legacy, Narset in Vintage. I mean, who would have thought? Like, the little planeswalker that could. I mean, it turns out this is another one of those asymmetrical effects that doesn't affect you. You can outcome, you can brainstorm, you can, do the Teferi thing, you can whatever you're doing, it doesn't affect you. It just affects them. And if you can slam this on turn 1, that's terrifying. Just to shut down your opponent's game plan, especially if you're playing any sort of blue mirror. I played this even in Sealed. I played this with our friend A Little Alof. We did some two-headed giant, and even just in limited, this card did work. Just reminding people of like, that's a thing. You can't do that. Like,
oh, it's nuts. And I've been bit before where I cast a draw spell and I was like, wait, what just? Oh, Narset, what'd you do that for? Girl, look, I recognize the power of Narset. Narset is number 10 on my list. I actually made the list, made sure, because Narset is just getting started. Y'all, like half a dig through time over 2 turns. They can't draw any extra cards. It's blue. It's cheap. Like, wow. This card just hits all the cylinders.
Yeah. And sort of has the opposite story arc of Tamiyo, whereas Tamiyo went from mono blue to 3-color. Narset started out 3-color and has whittled down to blue as the character has progressed.
Magali with the amazing artwork.
Yep.
Yeah. Magali absolutely crushed it. So this card is a multi-format all-star, and that's as good as they get in terms of Planeswalker design.
For an uncommon. This is an uncommon Planeswalker.
That's something I wanted to mention about War of the Spark, actually, is when you have a lot of successful sets have their uncommons be multi-dollar cards. This is a cornerstone of a lot of super popular sets. And one of the easiest ways I've ever seen to get your uncommons to be worth a good amount of money is to have Planeswalkers at uncommon.
Yeah, and it's a boon for the stores as well, like who are opening product and selling product. The uncommons being worth more than your average uncommon is huge. So let's move on here to number 2. Ruben, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is the last solo entry on my list because I share a number 1. My number 2 is a character who don't get no respect at all, until very recently. But this card, you know how I like it when cards win Pro Tours. This card won 3 Pro Tours. Kazuyuki Takamura won with 4 copies of this in Abzan at Pro Tour Battle for Zendikar in Aaron's Stomping Grounds of Milwaukee. Steve Rubin won with Celestia Aggro at Pro Tour Shadows over Innistrad. And then Mardu Vehicles had this card. Lucas Esperbertode won at Pro Tour Aether Revolt. This card is extremely powerful. It dominated the format in a number of different decks. As you can tell, it won the Pro Tour in 3 different decks. My number 2 is Gideon, Ally of Zendikar. Gideon, Ally of Zendikar is 2 colorless, white for a legendary Planeswalker. Gideon starts with loyalty of 4, +1 until end of turn. Gideon, Ally of Zendikar becomes a 5/5 human soldier ally creature with indestructible that's still a Planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. 0, make a 2/2.
Oh my god.
0, make a 2/2 white knight ally creature token.
Gross.
And -4, keep in mind, loyalty 4, -4, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +1/+1.
So it was Glorious Anthem. It was unbelievable. This was my number 4, so we just we just missed each other because this to me had to be in the top 5. This card was stupidly good.
My favorite thing to do with this card was to steal it with Silumgar and then -4 and kill it and take the emblem. That felt amazing. Another multi-format all-star, saw sideboard play in Modern and Legacy, which is not easy to do for a Planeswalker. I ran it in Esper Dragons as one of my win conditions, and the card just does so much. And, this was... Gideon is filling the role in Standard that Teferi is currently filling, where people just couldn't wait for it to rotate. And then towards the end of Standard, they released another one where people are like, are you serious? Like, are we really in like an 8 Teferi, universe here? And now we're seeing it with, big Teferi and little Teferi. Like, are you serious? And so it's interesting. You kind of come back around again.
Right, I wouldn't put Gideon of the Trials at the Teferi Time Raveler level, but
now, for a while people were like,
but I assure you, this was one of the first cards they showed at the set. This was when they had Will Wheaton out there hyping up the set at like PAX East or PAX West or wherever it was. And this was the poster child for it. And so people, crazy hype. People were super excited. But Battle for Zendikar sold a ton. Like it sold super duper well before people figured out the set was garbage. But Gideon in and of himself was just everywhere. In everything was the best thing you could be doing at 4 mana, with the best thing you could be doing in white. Like it was all over the place, to the point where I think they went a little too far With this one, I think it could have cost 5. I think it could have made a 1/1 instead of a 2/2. You know, there's a variety of like little knobs they could have tweaked on this thing to not make it just unbelievably powerful.
Yeah.
Just crazy over the top. It was nuts.
Yeah.
So that said, Aaron, what's number 2?
Number 2 is another one of those cards that just wasn't good for a while. And Lord knows we saw enough versions of her. And she was usually relegated to, like, again, one-ofs at sideboard spots, which was strange because she had been such an important character. She was one of the original members of the Gatewatch. And you would have thought that, like, they would have found a way to do her correctly. But years went by. Formats went by, and this was probably, I'd say, the best version of her. She rightfully got compared to another amazing Planeswalker, which I'm sure we'll talk about very soon. My number 2, Chandra, Torch of Defiance. So Chandra, Torch of Defiance was from Kaladesh, 2 colorless and 2 red, starting off with 4 loyalty. One of the few Planeswalkers with 4 abilities. You can +1 to exile the top card of your library. You may cast that card. If you don't, Chandra, Torch of Defiance deals 2 damage to each opponent. Again, playing in that red space of this is how red gets card advantage now. This sort of outpost siege, kind of ability, which I love. And if you don't want to cast it, fine, I'll just kill you. It's fine. I've lost to the plus before. You can also +1 her and add 2 red to your mana pool. It's a really great way to ramp into things. You can also see, she sometimes sees play on the older formats in the mono red prison lists, going all the way back to vintage. A turn 1 Chandra is terrifying. You'd be surprised how many decks can't deal with her. -3, Chandra deals 4 damage to a creature. It's fine, you'll take it. Or you can -7, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, this emblem deals 5 damage to target creature or player. I mean, this card, was being compared to Jace the Mind Sculptor because she had those 4 abilities. She was one of the first cards. We knew we were going to Kaladesh. We knew it was going to be a Chandra plane, and Chandra needed to be good. Standard, modern, legacy, vintage, any sort of red deck, any red prison deck wanted to play this. Any sort of big red deck wanted to play this. She was kind of jammed into any of the red decks in Standard for a while there, and it was just a really good time and long overdue for a good Chandra. And I would argue that this one's just one of the best.
Yeah, her +1 here is similar to Chandra Fire Artisan, which just got printed in War of the Spark. And this was, but her +1 on this one not only lets you exile it and play it. Oh no, you can also just hit their face, which was amazing. Because so on turn 4, it wasn't that bad to hit a spell that you couldn't play because you still got a free shock out of it.
Yeah.
Where Artisan kind of has that issue where you're like, oh, there's a spell I'll never get to play type feeling.
Yeah.
But 4 abilities, you could card advantage. It had mana advantage, it had protecting itself, and it had a really sweet emblem that could kill them if you just play Magic. So between all of that, this was a monster Planeswalker. This was my number 7.
This was my number 3.
Nice. Wow. Really up there, Ruben. What puts it all the way up there for you?
Well, it's ubiquity. It was just all over the place. It was, again, one of these cards that when you have a card that is even a double red requirement on the casting cost, was still seeing play in a dozen archetypes, was seeing play over a number of formats. It was not so much that one deck dominated a format, but that the card was dominant of the format. I think that like 3 of the 5 most popular decks were running multiple Chandras, which is very difficult for a 2 colorless and 2 red card. It's hard. It's easy to forget that red was pretty bad for a while there, and then Chandra came around, and the red deck and Mardu vehicles, and I mean, there were just so many decks that Chandra Torch of Defiance was great in. Card advantage, mana acceleration, it was able to protect itself, and it had a powerful ultimate. An incredibly good card.
Right.
And also was our artwork of the year 2 years ago.
Absolutely. As it should be. Macaulay was totally crushing it. This card still sees play. I mean, just look. It sees play in the Arc-like Phoenix deck, and it also sees play in the Valakut deck, and it also sees play in a red Eldrazi deck. I mean, and then, of course, it dominated with Rakdos, Mardu, aggro stuff, and Standard for a very long time. This is one of those cards where they get to say, here's the bar. Here's as good as you're going to get in terms of your format and efficiency and Planeswalker power. Good luck playing around it. And
for my money, the best deck that Chandra was ever in was that 4-color energy mix-up.
Yes, Teamer Energy.
That was bizarre and was such a strange deck, and only had Chandra as its double red requirements, I think. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it had Harness Lightning and some other red cards in it.
Right.
But Chandra was like the centerpiece of like, okay, we've got to the Chandra point of the game.
Right. All right, so let's move on here to numero 2 for me. And I guess in many ways, I'm a traditionalist. I feel like there are certain levels at which certain planeswalkers are at, and I believe Liliana is at this level. Liliana of the Veil, in fact, showed up originally on Innistrad. And I think for me, Liliana is my permanent number 2. Someone has to be better than Liliana of the Veil to replace her as my number 2. This card is bananas. It's still $75, even though they just reprinted it in Ultimate Masters. It is the best box topper you could open at $280, which is a thing. Lily on the Veil is 2 black and a generic mana for a 3 loyalty planeswalker that has +1. Each player discards a card. -2. Target player sacrifices a creature. And -6. Separate all permanents target player controls into 2 piles. That player sacrifices all permanents in the pile of their choice. So when this first showed up, it was good. It was exciting. People liked it. It's not like it was bad. But then they were like, wait a minute, this card is really good. And they're like, wait a minute, this card's like super crazy good. And they're like, oh my God, this card sees play in like all the formats. And like, oh my God, I guess it just like totally runs Modern now. And then it just is like totally runs Modern now. That's kind of why Liliana of the Veil does.
This was my number 7. There are people that say that Deathrite Shaman paid for Liliana's sins. That Deathrite Shaman was not the reason it was banned in Modern, but it was banned because you could do turn 1, turn 2 Lilianas every single time, and people just couldn't compete with that, which you were seeing in Legacy for a while until eventually Deathrite was banned in that format too.
This was my number 6.
But yeah.
The only thing keeping it from being higher on my list is it unfortunately never won a Pro Tour. It came very close a couple of times.
That's crazy.
I know it's insane to think about, but of course, Kenji Tsumura, I believe it was, got second place in the Eggs Pro Tour. It dominated for a long time. It was the centerpiece card of the most popular Modern deck, Jund, and obviously was a powerhouse in Standard and Legacy and all the formats. It is the best 3-mana planeswalker. Every planeswalker that's 3 mana is compared to Liliana of the Veil now.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, she was the standard that all 3-mana planeswalkers had to live up to, that all the Lilianas had to live up to. And she's rarely bad. You can play her against an aggressive deck and sacrifice creatures and whatnot. But if you just stick her against a control deck and they can't deal with her, she can just run away with the game. I mean, a lot of planeswalkers that we've covered, aren't good in certain spots. Maybe they do what they do very well, and then when they don't, they're really bad. But Liliana's rarely bad. Like if you look at any sort of black-green sideboard guide, you're rarely boarding her out because there is something that you can do with her, even if it's not what you'd like to be doing. And I know that there was talk of possibly bringing her back when they came back to Shadows over Innistrad, and they were like, she's too good, we can't do it.
I mean, she did win the World Magic Cup when it was Unified Modern.
That's true.
That was a thing, I guess.
And there are a couple of planeswalkers that I say, this didn't win a Pro Tour, but for example, Tameo Field Researcher won Worlds, and there's a number of big tournaments like that don't show up in my searches sometimes.
Right.
Liliana, it's just one of those weird quirks, and she's still got a chance, of course.
Oh, of course. And Jerry Thompson got second place with her at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan,
right?
Which was just right there. And of course, Reed Duke also made top 8 there with Abzan with Liliana in there. So Liliana, it's hard to say too many good things about Liliana the Veil.
Another of these cards, like Chandra, like a couple of the others on like Gideon, where it's not so much that it was a powerhouse in 1 or 2 or 3 archetypes. It's that it is powerhouse in all archetypes.
Oh, yeah. If you're playing any sort of black deck, you're probably playing Liliana. Like I ran her in Death Cloud. You see her in Death Shadow. You see her in the Delver decks. I mean, you see her in Pox decks. I mean, again, when a planeswalker can be just sort of jammed, like we're seeing with Karn to a certain example, even Narset, you're playing blue, you're playing Narset. Like, I think it says something else about a planeswalker when it could just be put anywhere and it's good.
Yeah, it's the Smallpox, Grixis Shadow, Abzan, Lantern Control, The Rock, Junk, Fairies. Like, when it's just in everything, it's not...
Right.
It's just, that's wild.
When it's a card that's being played alongside Bloodbraid Elf on one side, a 3/2 haste creature, and then like 6 mana control cards on the other side, that you're doing something right. Like this saw play with Sun Titan in Standard, of course.
Wow.
Lots of fun things going on there. just all over the place, from control to mid-range to aggro, just all over.
It was one of those cards that I got to ask Eric Lauer about specifically before Wizards was like, hey, you don't ask questions that we haven't screened yet. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Well, back in the day, I could just ask R&D, hey, what's up with Liliana of the Veil? And they're like, we were afraid we made her too good. And it's like, well, she's really good. So thanks. That's a thing. Yeah. Let's move here to number 1. Aaron, what's your number 1?
Really?
Yeah.
Like, you're seriously good. I have to say it? Like, I mean, come on. Like, I mean, who else could it be? I mean, I share my number 1 with somebody. Why don't you?
I also share number 1.
Nice.
Ruben, do this.
It is very, it is, have we ever done a triple same?
Yes. So we've had a couple of triple sames.
Triple sames, okay.
Sphinx's Revelation was our consensus Azorius best card.
True.
I don't recall. I think that one of the creature types we had a consensus best card.
Okay.
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I mean, I think that there was no question that this had to be the number 1 on the list. It, of course, what decks hasn't this card won with?
Oh my God.
Of course, it was dominant in every format that it was legal in. It is still to this day the most expensive of the Planeswalkers. It is in all of the cubes that could possibly ever want it. And for me, it's the only Planeswalker that has ever appeared on any banned or restricted list.
It's
which
true.
Speaks to its power.
I mean, he's better than all.
Yeah.
There's no other Planeswalker that has a song written about him or her
except
or
for
them.
Eugene. Except for Eugene.
Except for Eugene, and you heard it earlier, right here.
You need to cut a track, get Patrick to do like a rap guest verse on it. I mean, you could do like do Old Town Road or whatever.
Sample style, yeah.
Nice. Just kind of sort of a remix, Jace the Mind Sculptor remix. Let's bring it
Like
back.
your video girl. You can like make it rain Tarmogoyfs on me. I'm there.
Right. Wow. And you'll just be like, boobies. Well, that's pre-show. Okay.
we have to get a sports car. But
Jace the Mind Sculptor came to us in World Wake. It is 2 blue, 2 generic mana for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker that has 4 abilities, the first one to ever do so at the time. +2, look at the top card of target player's library. You may put that card on the bottom of that player's library. Also, it's sort of not written there, but if you put it back on top, they lost. 0, oftentimes. 0:, draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order, aka Brainstorm.
Just not when your opponent has Narset out.
Don't do that with Narset.
That's feel bad.
That's a hurting.
Yeah.
-1, return target creature to its owner's hand.
Merit Lage, Grizzlebrand, whatever you got.
Unsummon. And -12. This originally was -9, and at the last minute, they changed it to -12. I kid you not. -12, exile all cards from target player's library, then that player shuffles his or her hand into his or her library. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, that could have been 17. And it would still would have been activated a reasonable number of times.
Yes.
Yeah, Jace the Mind Sculptor is absurd. Being able to get out of bolt range is a huge deal. Being able to protect itself is a huge deal. Being able to have a finisher is a huge deal. And none of those abilities are its best. The 0 Brainstorm ability is ridiculous. And the fact that you don't really have to spend any resources beyond just having Jace on the battlefield to be able to brainstorm every turn is insane, particularly in formats where fetch lands are legal and you can shuffle away extra chaff that you draw. There's a reason why Brainstorm is the most played card in Legacy, and it's because of the fetch land, dual land format. Jace being able to do that over and over and over again is a huge deal. It was a dominant force in fact, it was a dominant force in every format except Modern, really, but it was still really good in Modern, just not the top tier. Yeah. Jace has been the best card in the best deck in every other format for at least some amount of time.
I got to throw down the gauntlet of they will not ban Jace the Mind Sculptor in Standard, followed by them banning Jace the Mind Sculptor in Standard, which was awkward. It's fine. Like, this was a card that was kept in check for a long time by Bloodbraid Elf and friends. But Shards of Alara doesn't stay forever. And when it rotated out, Jace took over quite quickly. It was Stoneforge plus Jace .format, and you got that not only in Standard, but also in Legacy. It didn't take too many weeks of that. It took many, many weeks of Cawblade This being Squadron Hawk with various Swords of Feast and Famine and whatnot, plus Stoneforge, plus Jace. The variations of that, the Angry Birds variation adding red, and I can't remember what the black one was called. But all the variations therein. This was the card they finally took off the ban list in Modern, and everyone like lost their mind. Ben Friedman wrote an article that said like, "That's it, folks. We're all done here. GG Modern. We're done." So gotta be careful when you place your bets. But all I'm saying is this card is worth over $117. They've printed it 3 times and a From the Vault 20. Still the best, not close.
Yeah, this
Ridiculous.
was a huge selling point for Masters 25. You know, the whole debate about like, would they do this? So number one, would they put it in the set? And number two, would they unban it? And they did. And I remember looking at Magic Online, the Twitch page, when the day that it was unbanned, and seeing all of these streamers trying it in every archetype. The Scapeship players were trying it, the Death Shadow players were trying it, the Jeskai players were trying it, and just everyone getting so eager to play with this card. And I remember the learning curve of Modern players having to learn how to brainstorm because Legacy players, you know, some Legacy players still take a long time, but for those of us who are familiar with brainstorm, we can kind of snap it off pretty quickly. But, you know, God bless some of these Modern guys that were like,
I gotta put them back. What order? I don't know. Where there's a fetch land? What?
Exactly. And it's just, I mean, there can just be no other. I mean, this is just the de facto Planeswalker. If you have 4 abilities, that's what you get compared to. Chandra got compared to it. If there's a Jace, it has to get compared to this. I mean, there's just nothing wrong with this card. And
it got so big. Okay, here's how big Jace got. Where I think we said at one point or other, I was a Star City and running Grand Prix or whatever. And, you know, they asked like, you know, you could request artwork, you know, for your stuff. And we're just like, oh, Jace, can we use Jace? And they're like, we kind of want to pull back on Jace just a little bit. We've kind of gone like full Jace. You can also watch an interview with Mike Turian, who developed this card that I did many years ago. And you can hear him. And it's weird. Like I get Mike Turian. I totally get Mike Turian because to me, he is a Timmy Spike, much like myself. So I understood when I said, Mike, 0 for Brainstorm? Really? And he said, well, it was -1, but Zero's more fun, right? And I'm like, I guess it's more fun, Mike. You broke the whole Planeswalker. Okay.
Yeah. Keep in mind that this also was Mike Turian's final set as development lead.
Yes.
So he wanted to go out with a bang, and boy, howdy did he with Worldwake.
I mean, yeah, go back and look at Worldwake and see the crazy man lands. Like, it was...
Worldwake was a heck of a set. I would venture to guess that Worldwake boxes are above the mean, shall we say.
They're $1 million for sure. Yeah, so, but Jace the Mind Sculptor is better than all and is number 1 on every single one of our lists. And you can see them right now. Our top 10 Planeswalkers on the screen. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10. We want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Play us out, Evan.
Gonna not playing us out.
Not gonna play us out.
Eugene. Oh my God, if this whole podcasting thing fizzles, we'll just be like a barbershop quartet. It'll be great.
We got this. It's what we fall back on. So I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-host, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bresser, you guys for watching or listening, and hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, or like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes and Spotify. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another award-winning episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.